All right, let's talk about tigers. For a long, long time, the thinking was pretty simple. To save India's tigers, you had to build a fortress. Walls up, people out, wildlife in. But what if that whole idea was wrong? Well, today we're going to dig into a really radical new approach that might just change everything.
And really, it all comes down to this one question. It seems simple on the surface, but wow, it's at the core of a super complex and honestly often painful debate in India. On one hand, you have the survival of this incredible, iconic animal, and on the other, you have the rights of people, of communities who have called these forests home for generations. It's a tough one. So, to really get why this new policy is such a big deal, we gotta go back and look at the old way of doing things. It's an approach that's often called fortress conservation.
So, what exactly is fortress conservation? Well, the idea behind it is pretty straightforward, really. It's all about separating nature and people. The goal was to create these perfect, untouched, human-free zones where wildlife could thrive. But, and this is a big but, that strategy came with a huge human cost. We're talking about the forced displacement of communities, people who had lived in these forests for, well, forever.
Okay, but now things are changing. A brand new policy framework is on the table, and it's looking to completely flip the script. It's like a new social contract for conservation, one where people are seen as partners, not as problems. And check this out, this one line. This is a total game changer. I mean, think about it. Moving from the word trespassers to stakeholders, that's not just playing with words. That's a fundamental seismic shift in how we think about the relationship between people and the forest. It's finally recognizing that these communities have a legitimate place and actual rights within these ecosystems. So, you might be asking, how does this new policy actually work? Well, it's built on a few really solid legal pillars. First, it strongly upholds the Forest Rights Act of 2006, which is huge for community land rights. Second, it says relocation is an absolute last resort, an exceptional measure, not just the go-to solution. And on top of that, it creates a real legal safety net. We're talking about things like using the Prevention of Atrocities Act for illegal evictions and setting up a whole three-tier system for communities to challenge decisions and get justice if their rights are trampled on. All right, so let's put these two ideas head to head. When you look at the old fortress model versus this new cohabitation idea, the difference is, well, it's night and day. I mean, just look at this comparison. It really shows the massive gap between the two ways of thinking. We're shifting from a world where people are seen as trespassers to one where they're stakeholders, from a goal of exclusion to a goal of coexistence. It's not just a tweak, the entire game has been reframed. It's a move away from top-down enforcement towards actually upholding community rights. Okay, so this all sounds great, right? But, and there's always a but, a policy on paper is one thing. The real test, the real challenge, is making it happen on the ground. And let's be clear, the path forward is definitely not a simple one. And the Hindu editorial that we're looking at makes this point really, really clearly. A national policy is a great start, but you have to remember that India's forests are managed at the state level. Plus, the whole conservation establishment has been doing things a certain way for a very long time. Old habits die hard, you know?
So what does that mean? It means there's a huge potential for friction. You've got a bunch of hurdles to clear. For starters, you might get resistance from the very people in charge of the forests. Then you've got the fact that states have a lot of freedom in how they apply these laws, so enforcement could be spotty. And we can't forget that different communities have totally different needs. On top of all that, there's still a strong argument from many conservationists that animals like tigers do need those human-free zones to survive. Yeah, this is not a simple problem. Which brings us right back to the central challenge, the big question at the heart of all this. How in the world do you find the right balance? So, how can India protect its tigers and the rights of its oldest communities? The new policy suggests the answer isn't some giant one-size-fits-all rule handed down from the top. No, the key is to get local. It's about developing fine-tuned mechanisms that are specific to each place. Because let's face it, what works in one tiger reserve might be a total disaster in another. The solution has to be tailored to the unique ecology and the unique community of each and every forest. And that right there is the tightrope that India has to walk. It's about moving away from the fortress model, which, let's be honest, was often insensitive and unjust. But, and this is critical, we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't abandon the goal of protecting India's incredible natural riches. This is really a call for a smarter, more inclusive, and hopefully a more sustainable way of thinking about conservation.
So the question really isn't if we can live alongside tigers anymore. The real question is how. And finding the answer to that, well, that's going to shape the future for India's forests, its wildlife, and its people.